Now, you're very welcome along. So, very sad news this morning from Kerry. Obviously, the passing of Mick O'Dwyer at the age of 88. He was and has been a living legend for several decades at this stage. And so at the age of 88, he passes away a full-on icon of GAA, a full-on icon of Irish sport. He's one of the truly great sporting figures in the history of the country. He is much loved all around the country as well. To just lay out the bare facts of his career for a moment before we talk about him with two men who knew him. Micko, of course, is of Waterville in South Kerry. He was born in 1936. And the extraordinary thing is, of his 88 years, 57 of them were spent involved in inter-county football. So 57 years as player and manager. Combined total of 12 All-Ireland senior football titles as player and manager. The player is probably overlooked a touch. He won 4 All-Irelands, the first man from Waterville to do so for Kerry, to win an All-Ireland football title for Kerry. His first was in 59. Famously, he revealed that Mick O'Connell forgot Sam Maguire in the dressing room afterwards. There was another then in 62. That was actually the first final broadcast on RTE television. O'Dwyer started in the backs, a half-back, and moved into the forwards as his career progressed. He broke both legs in 64, still made the All-Ireland final that year, but that was, of course, the time of that brilliant Galway team who were in the midst of winning 3 in a row, so he didn't win that year. He retired at the age of 29, Micko, and became a selector in the 1960s for Kerry, and as selector he put himself back in the team. Which was probably the right thing to do, because he was Texaco Footballer of the Year when he won his 3rd All-Ireland in 69. He won a 4th All-Ireland a year later in 70, scoring 5 points in the final against Meath. And he says himself in that famous, brilliant Micko documentary, which I suspect we'll see on our TV screens tonight or tomorrow night or in the next few nights again. He said, in that period, we won 4 All-Irelands and we lost 5, so they'll tell you it was a bad time for Kerry football. Well, the good times were rolling. Retired in 74, became manager in 75, straight away, Kerry manager 1975, and that was only just the beginning. There was the ambush, as he called it, of Dublin in 75 with his great young team. The Dubs bounced back in 76 and 77, and then, of course, it was the 4 in a row. Micko later described the win in 78, the first of the 4 in a row, as the greatest day in his life, and, of course, the 5 in a row, so famously scuppered by Offaly in 82. Here were his thoughts in that Micko documentary.
What's left in the game? Kerry leading by 2 points.
Time nearly up. Everything looked great. A high speculative kick from Connor, the fullback.
A high lobbing, dropping ball in towards the goal. A shot. A goal.
Bang. Back of the net. Game over. A little nudge made history.
That is one of the most sensational finals I have ever seen. Kerry cruising to victory, and then it was on the cards all the time that that goal would come.
If you were well beaten, you'd be happy enough. But I mean, we were so close. I felt sick for 2 months after. I never left Waterville. I stayed in the house, put the tape in and had a look at it, and just saying to myself, pity we didn't do this, pity we didn't do that. It's like a death in the family, if that's possible. I think of it at least once a week. It's still implanted in my mind.
What followed from 82, though, every bit as impressive in many ways. The 3 in a row in 84, 85 and 86. So 15 years as Kerry manager. Extraordinary, already legendary, but he wasn't done yet. The 90s, of course, were Kildare. 42 years, no Leinster title. He managed to win 2 of them. There was the 1998 All-Ireland final against Galway, of course. It was an absolute golden age in Kildare football. If you want a sense of the feeling at the time, All-Ireland semi-final in 98, Charlie McCreevy is on television saying it's better than sex. That's what Micko brought to Kildare football. And here is Micko on the same day after winning that semi-final against Kerry, of course, to get to the All-Ireland final against Galway.
Champions and reach the All-Ireland final for the first time since 1935. Glenn Ryan has been a magnificent captain this afternoon. He kisses the ground in delight. The fans come in to invade Croke Park, and it's going to be a Kildare versus Galway final. Charlie is happy.
Something I never look forward to. something I never thought that would happen in my career in football. It has happened now, but sure, I mean, that's part and parcel of sport. We have to accept the wins when they come. We did it today. I think we did it in style.
They sure did. 0-2, he goes to Laois. They were, if Kildare were, 42 years with no Leinster title. Laois had been 57 years with no Leinster title. And Micko duly delivered there a Leinster title for Laois. 5 years as Wicklow manager, Tommy Murphy Cup in there, and then his final stint was with Clare back in 2013. And as he said himself in the documentary, the last team he managed were the Waterville under-14s for 2 years at the age of 79.
I've no more to do. I did it all and got great enjoyment out of it, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
In studio to remember a genuine icon, Martin Breheny of the Irish Independent, who of course wrote Micko's autobiography with them. Blessed and obsessed back in 07. Martin, great to have you on. Thanks for coming in today.
Okay, Joe, sad day.
Very sad day, and well, second time in a few days under unplanned, sadder circumstances. Pat Spillane has made time for us again. Pat, how you doing? Sad day, as Martin says.
It is indeed, Joe. Very sad.
I've laid out the facts that everybody knows, and you two can give us a feel for the man. When did you last see him, Pat?
I went to see him in hospital 2 days ago. He was on his way out. He was in a coma. I spent 2 occasions with him that day, 15 minutes. The last time I was maybe 15 minutes on my own with Micko. Like I said, he wasn't conscious. I was there to say my goodbye. I held his hand for those 15 minutes. And I just thanked him for everything he did for me as a footballer and as a person. Just a great man.
That's a big 15 minutes in your life.
Oh, special. It's special. Look, Micko, I worshipped the ground that Micko stood on. My father died at 8 years of age, and Micko, for a lot of my life, was the father figure I never had. And my 2 idols growing up in Kerry were Mick O'Connell and Mick O'Dwyer. And it's funny that we talk about you went through his career there, and I could see a connection for 60 years between the Spillanes and Mick O'Dwyer. In 1964, Micko played in the All-Ireland final against Galway. My father was selector for that match in 1964. In 1974, Micko played his last match for Kerry, and I was privileged to have been playing the same day for Kerry against Sligo. I made my debut with Micko in 75. And the thing about me as a footballer, I wasn't blessed with the skills of the Cliffords and the Morris Fitzgeralds and the Gooches. They had more skill in their small toe than I had in my entire body. But Micko saw something in me. I was raw. I was eager. And I give 100%. And Mick O'Dwyer saw something in me. And he gave me a chance. He filled me full of belief. He filled me full of confidence. And he left me off. And in the 15 years I soldiered with Micko in Kerry, 15 brilliant years, not a bad word ever crossed between myself and Micko. I suppose in a way, one of the reasons was he had 2 pets on the team. One was Bomber, and I think I was the second pet because he knew I'd run through the wall from him and I'd come back again through another part of the wall that hadn't been knocked down yet. That was Micko. He was one of those people. People talk about what he was as a trainer, as a coach, but he was one of those guys. When you spoke with Micko, or when Micko spoke with you, he filled you full of belief, but you came away after talking with Micko 10 foot tall. There was no one could stand in your way. That was Micko.
God, it's lovely listening to you. It's great to have such love for the man, because a lot of great managers have a mixed or a complicated relationship with some of their players. whereas you're talking there about a fairly uncomplicated love.
Oh, absolutely. It was, like I said, he was a father figure. He was a mentor. He was just a great man. He was a Kerry man. He was a rogue. There was the glint in the eye. And sure, at times, because he was a plough master, he was the best plough master in the business. And sure, at times that he was probably telling somebody alongside you that you had a bad game. But he told you what you wanted to hear. And that's what we're all like in sport. We're selfish and we all egos, and we want to be told. And you talk about the continuation of 64 with my father, 74. Here's the last working connection with Micko, is that for the second ever live televised match that RT did, when they were starting the Sunday game in the championship, it was up in Carrick and Shannon. It was Leitrim against, I'm not too sure. I was an analyst. It was my second full day. Micko was the co-commentator. And so we worked together on one of the original programmes of the Sunday game because he was such a rogue. I always remember the production assistant was asking Micko to fill out his mileage expenses from Waterford to Carrick and Shannon. And I said to the lady after Micko had given her the figures, I said, look, put me down for the same figures as Micko, because rest assured he had found a way to Carrick and Shannon, which took you out via Tory Island and up by Scotland and down by... He was a rogue of the high school. So look, brilliant memories of a very special man, and a man that made, just one final thing, and I've often spoke about it, because Micko made me as a footballer, but Micko made me as a person. Micko instilled in me my philosophy in life, and I've told this so many times. In all Micko's team talks, he never spoke about the opposition, and he never spoke about the opposition's star players and how we could stop them. And that's a lot of team talks over 10 All-Ireland finals in 10 years or 12 years. But it was all about instilling belief in ourselves, instilling belief in our teammates, and that we would deliver. So for me, as a player, but as somebody going through life, my glass was always half full. Micko instilled in me a positive attitude, which to this very day I take through life. So, like I said, as a player, as a person, I owe everything to Micko.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could hear the emotion in your voice. So I'll bring Martin in a second. I knew your father had passed away when you're young. I don't know why. I should have, obviously, when you arrived on the scene so young with Micko. I'd never put the father figure aspect together. Now that you say it, of course he was.
I think it's only when I was writing my book 2 years ago, and it was a very personal book for me to write, because I wanted to write about Pat Spillane as a person and what football meant to me and what life was. And it was only when I talked about my father, and actually, funny enough, I didn't know my father that well, because I was only 8 when he died. So I didn't really remember my father. In actual fact, the more I wrote in the book about my father, and it wasn't much, the one thing that kept nagging me for a year or two after was that I was wondering, what did my father's voice sound like? Because I couldn't recollect what my father's voice sounded like. And it was only, because I was only 18 years of age when Micko took me under his wing. And I travelled the Linton because I was one of those fellas that Micko would bring. We'd meet in Killarney, we'd travel to all the National League games and whatever like that. So I was with Micko a lot of time. And it was only after, when I was writing about Micko, and I've never said a bad word about him, but it was just saying to myself, maybe he was the father figure that I never had, that subconsciously I didn't realise. But like I said, if the man told me to jump off the top of the building onto the ground, Jesus, I do it. I believed in everything he told me to do.
Yeah. It's probably not appropriate, but I just suddenly had a memory of reading. When did you bring out your autobiography in the 90s? Anyway, I'm conscious because I know your better half is helped you set up the iPad there, and she's probably listening.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, in the book, I remember you talking about when you were training like a dog under Micko, and through brick walls. And it was.
I know it.
Now, you put this in the book, not me. And it was late. It was late at night, and she may have cuddled into you, and
kill me, but,
yeah.
Okay, she'll kill me.
And you were too tired, and she said, if Micko asked you to, you would.
Yeah, that was I mean, Micko. We all have our failings, and Micko's, if there is a failing he had as a manager, was that he was very loyal to the fellas who had delivered him All-Ireland titles in the past. Loyalty was very good to us, and he held on to us way past our sell-by date, and I remember in 1987, 86, we won the All-Ireland, and in fairness, like you mentioned it there in the intro, if we won 5 in a row, we wouldn't have won another All-Ireland. But he got us motivated with a team who were far from like the 70s team, and he motivated us to win another 3 All-Irelands in a row. And he knew he was getting the maximum out of us. And we went in 1987 as a reward. We went on the All-Star tour, Kerry and the All-Stars, and it was there that he realised that, and I think we all realised that we're on the last tour. We won't be going another tour again. And anyway, we went on the beer in San Francisco on the Saturday night. I'll never forget, we were in the place down in Fisherman's Wharf, the Buena Vista, where allegedly Irish coffee was invented. But anyway, we had an awful day of drinking, and we missed the function that night in honour of us, and we played the All-Stars the following day in a bad shape, and we got absolutely massacred. And it was the only time on a tour that Micko ever insisted the following morning. He brought us out training on a beach in San Francisco. Now this was the sorriest bunch of boys that ever arrived at a training session under Mick O'Dwyer. And he made us run 2 miles out along the beach and 2 miles back. And Bomber hid behind a sand dune on the way out. So Bomber actually came second in the race because he only joined the race with 100 metres to go. But you know who won the race? Sean Kelly, the county board chairman. And he was running in his sandals. So, like, the writing was on the wall. So that going fast forward to 1989 and the last hurrah. Micko thought if he killed us in training, if he crucified us in training, there was one last hurrah. Yeah. And 1989, and it was the year I got married. I was working in Bantry, come home, work in the bar, let Rosario off for an hour to have her dinner, go on to Tralee to train, come back, and anyway, eventually, I came upstairs at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Rosario was asleep was in the bed, and I was wrecked. I made it up to the bedroom, and then I threw myself in, and the hand came over, as it seems does sometimes, and the hand came over, and I said, Rosario, Jesus, I'm wrecked. And she said, if Mick O'Dwyer wanted you to do what you do. And, I swear to God, it summed up in a way, like the power of that man. Because whatever he wanted us to do, Jesus, we do it. Sorry, Rosario.
Yeah, we all apologise. Sorry, it's my fault. Martin, we'll talk to you about the man you got to know, but just GAA journalist, the history of the game is kind of at your fingertips. Micko sort of lofts above everybody, doesn't he?
He does, and just go back to Pat for a second there. I remember when we were doing the book, one of the comments he made was, he said Spillane was unmanageable. He said, so you didn't just manage him, you played him, and that was it. Let him do what he wanted. But you see, and Pat obviously was with him for all of that many years as a player. But there is a tendency maybe to forget what he was like as a player and the outstanding player that he was for so many years. And interestingly, when he played his first game, he played was in 1956 against Carlow, and Carlow beat them and beat Kerry in the league. And the Kerry man noted afterwards in their report that newcomer Mick O'Dwyer was not a success at right half back. And the following year, they lost to Waterford in the Munster Championship, and again Micko was criticised for his performance that day. So here was this young fella. If anybody had said in that time that this man is not alone going to be one of the best players the game has ever seen, but arguably, in fact, I'd say a very solid argument for being the best manager of all time, nobody would have seen it coming. But he has that as a player as well. And I mean, I was a young kid growing up in Galway at the time, in the 60s, and Galway, he had an unhappy relationship with Galway. They beat them in 63 semi-final, 64 All-Ireland final, 65 league final and 65 All-Ireland final. And Micko always, that was a stone in Micko's shoe always. And when we were doing the book, he actually referred to that regularly. And in the 65 league final, Galway got a late goal, Seamus Layden got a late goal, Matty McDonagh passed the ball to him and Seamus got the goal, and there was a big debate at the time whether the ball was picked off the ground or not. And they were playing golf many years later, Matty McDonagh and Micko, not together, but they were going parallel on some hole or other, and Micko shouts across at him, Matty, he says, "Do you pick that ball off the ground?" And Matty, quick as a flash, says, "No, I didn't, Micko. Quickness of the hand can deceive the eye." And they had this banter between them over the years. But that was a time of the rivalry. Also, there was an interesting thing in 1963. It just shows you the obsessive nature the man had. He injured his toe. A concrete cover for a manhole fell on his toe in the garage the Wednesday before the league final against Down. Mangled his toe, really. But he wasn't going to miss the league final. And he cut a hole. He told me it's in the book. He cut a hole off the boot and in the boot and bandaged it up. So he played the league final with his toe sort of sticking out of the boot. And he said, "I got an injection." He said it would have knocked out a horse, but he said to kill the pain and to get. It was absolutely mangled, but he was not going to miss it, and that was the thing. 64, he broke his legs, came back, played wasn't right. Really, he wasn't really fully fit, as he would admit himself. But so that's where it came from, and that career, the fact that he moved so easily from half back to half forward, something he did many years later with a lot of players. In fact, I think Pat's brother Tom went the other way. He played. I remember see him in the league final, I think in '84 as full forward. I think, and then he went back, of course, to be the great centre back. So he had that. You know, he saw the game the way others didn't, and saw it right to the end, right up to his last days. I suppose his days with Wicklow, for instance, which were arguably his finest achievement, one of his finest achievements, what he did in Wicklow in 2007 or 2009 when they got the last 12. So he saw things differently, and he trusted himself, and it just worked. And everywhere you went, Micko was just loved, adored. He treated everybody the same. He pretended, he'd know anybody. If you're walking down the street with Micko, someone said, and he'd say, "How are you?" And he let on, he knew them. That was him. That was his great. But I think there is a tendency perhaps to forget what an outstanding player he was for so many years.
Yeah. And so you say, Martin, he is the greatest manager.
I do, yeah, and the reason is this. He went. Let's leave Pat and that incredible team aside. You can't really, but we'll think what they achieved. They came back to win the 3 in a row. And Pat, you played in the league final in '84 against Galway down in Limerick, and they lost out the 82 and 83, 82 to off, 83 to Cork, the Munster final. I remember being in the dressing room afterwards. Kerry had beaten Galway 3 points, I think it was. And Micko was on this transition thing. We're a team in transition. We're in transition now. We're building for the future. Team in transition. And I said to Micko, hang on, 13 of the players you played today were on your 4-in-a-row team, or most of the 4-in-a-row team. And he let this big laugh out of him. No, we're a team in transition. But of course, he wanted to give this impression that he was that this was going on. But that was Kerry. He didn't go to Kildare, and as you said earlier, took them to heights, and that hadn't been for so long, 98, 2000, and maybe got the tactics a bit wrong against Galway in 2000. Perhaps didn't concentrate enough on Galway speed merchants that day. He trusted his own players, and maybe they weren't quite. Maybe that 2000 won the Leinster again. Then goes to Laois, as if he was hijacked on his way home almost, because he left Kildare in 2002, and suddenly he's in Laois, and then they won the Leinster in 2003, and then to Wicklow. And what he did at Wicklow, the first match he played, I think the first match they played Carlow in a Byrne Cup game, I think it was TG Carr televised live. The Auckland was buzzing. It was unbelievable. And unfortunately for them, in 2007 and 2008, there was no back door for teams in Division 4. So they were, when they were knocked out of Leinster, they were gone. Then they won the Tommy Murphy Cup, now the equivalent of the Tailteann Cup, or the then equivalent. But in 2009, to beat Cavan, Fermanagh and Down in successive weekends in Auckland, it was unbelievable. Something that, the idea of having, if they'd beaten Kildare, of course, in 2008, first time they'd won a match in championship match at Croke Park. But what he did in Wicklow was just unbelievable. And Down went on, as you know, the following year to reach the All-Ireland final, lost to Cork by a point. So to put it all together, everywhere he went, after Kerry, the team improved, and haven't been the same since in the 3 counties. So that, to me, unrivaled. I don't think anybody that makes him, to me, the best manager. And the one gap in his CV which I could never understand why it happened. He was never picked to manage the international rules team. Perhaps because, shall we say, he was outspoken about activities or how the GAA was being run. And I would suspect greatly that came against him, because he was an obvious candidate on a number of occasions, never got it, and I think it was very unfair. I think it was a great, and he was a big fan of it as well. I loved the international game and the whole lot, but never got it, and I can only assume it was to do with some of his, shall we say, critical remarks over the way the GAA was run over the years. It was a pity. He deserved it.
Yeah. I didn't realize he was critical.
He was critical of I mean, he would be critical of, for instance, that the GAA say when they wouldn't allow sponsorship of teams and all. I mean, we had the famous Bendix affair with Kerry. Was it 85, 86 when you were all, Pat, you were all dressed, or towels hanging off you and the standing in front of a Bendix washing machine, and
it was a washing machine, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. But it was at the time. You see, it was that wasn't allowed. It was on the morning of the All Ireland final. It was in the Sunday Independent and the Sunday Press, all over the place.
What? So Spillane and the lads in towels around a washing machine?
Yeah, not a pretty sight, let it be said, but it was all going into the holiday fund or whatever, and the GAA didn't like, and they didn't over the years. I mean, he advocated at one stage, I think he did at the time we did the book, of that players should be paid 25,000, if you're reaching All Ireland final. So he had that.
Okay.
So no, he was not. He wouldn't be. He wouldn't be. Shall we say, Croke Park wouldn't have been his greatest fan over many years. And I just, maybe that's not the reason, but there's no logical reason why Mick O'Dwyer was never manager of the international rules team.
No.
I can tell you this, Joe, without fear of doubt, it was his greatest regret, and he often spoke to me. He often said to me about how disappointed that he was that he never got appointed as the international rule says. And do you know what was even better? Do you know who was going to be his assistant if he was appointed? Me.
No, maybe it's a bullet dodge for us all.
He was offered the assistant manager's job on one occasion, which turned down. What an insult!
That's an insult. Yeah,
I agree with Martin, because he was really hurt. I mean, he was arguably, I would agree with Martin, the greatest manager of all time. It was something he should have been honoured with, and I think he was. I think at the time, if Martin will correct me, I think it was Sean Kelly, the Kerry man, was actually the GAA president at the time, and I think it was Eugene McGee was selected. He was very hurt over it. But actually, you talked about the Bendix, and like that was, you can talk about it, his qualities as a manager. I mean, he was an amazing motivator, and we've said that already. He was amazing at bringing such a mixed bunch of players from all over the county, to get them, fellas with nothing in common, fellas who weren't friends off the field, but they were all part of the one team on the field. He was amazing. And people talk about him being old-fashioned or whatever like that, but there was two things about him. His training, no matter how many years went through with Kildare's, the Wunt and the Leashes and the Wicklers, one of the qualities of all Micko's teams was that he always had them peaking on the day, because Micko had that. It's something that I'm sure Willie Mullins has in racing, or Aidan O'Brien. They don't need stats. There's something innate that they realise who needs more training, who needs less training, who needs to pull back. And look, Micko's training sessions were legendary. In 1975, we trained 27 nights in a row. 27 nights in a row. I mean, during the professional team ever invented that. But he wanted to get us fit, right? And get us fitter than anyone else. That was number one. But he did the laps of the field, and people will say, laps of the field are old-fashioned or whatever that is. But the laps of the field in February, or the 30 laps or the 40 laps in mud, there was a couple of things those laps did for you. One, obviously, it built up stamina. That was number one. But number two, it built up character. The guy who could give you full effort in February in the mud was also the same guy who can deliver on the third Sunday, September, in All Ireland final. And he was brilliant at knowing what players needed more, what players needed less. That was number one. When we'd go into the season was all just sharpness and ball work. And people, people talk about his tactics and that he wasn't tactically sharp. He was very simple in his philosophy, and it was a bit like Johan Cruyff with the famous Ajax team. Micko's philosophy to football was total football. He got us fit. We had the skills of the game, And very simple, total football was everyone with the ball is a forward, everyone without the ball is a defender. That was our philosophy. And I spoke the other day with you, Joe, about the only thing he'd tell us is don't be looking at the O'Neills and the ball. Heads up football. So he was a brilliant motivator. He was brilliant at getting the team peaking on the day. He was brilliant at playing as a team, attack-wise, defence-wise. But the big quality that he realised after an early stage was that medals weren't going to be the motivating factor. And there's nothing like an All-Ireland medal is a very special achievement. But when you win 2 and 3, suddenly and I don't mean to be in any way push it aside, like it's accumulation. So once you've won an All-Ireland medal, you've won an All-Ireland. And do I realise at an early stage, about 78 or 79 maybe, that, Jesus, we need something more. This is what I'll always say about Jim Gavin, how he kept that Dublin team so motivated, X number of years, unbelievable. Now, I can see with Jim Gavin, though, and this is the difference between Dublin and Kerry, this is the difference between Jim Gavin and Mick O'Dwyer. Jim Gavin was dealing with, over his period, maybe 35 players. Micko, over his period, particularly for the 5-in-a-row, only for the 5-in-a-row final, Jimmy Dean was injured and I was injured. We would have been starting in the 5-in-a-row, 14 of the team that started in 78. But he realised that we needed motivation and he dangled carrots. And the carrots were the foreign trips. And so the first foreign trip we got in maybe 79, we chose the most exotic location we could choose in the world, which was at the time Gran Canaria. And then it came on to 1980, and I think around 1980, I don't know what year was the Bindix, but Micko was, and this is probably his greatest quality. Micko was a player's man. He wanted the players to be looked after. He felt that GAA weren't looking after players. He wanted, if there's money to be going around, that the players got it. And it wasn't just 1 to 15, it was the entire panel. So I remember the Bindix, fair play to him. It was a brilliant move. We stood in front of a washing machine with our towels around us in Tralee, and I'm not too sure how much money we got, but it paid for a holiday. There was another year. He was always pissed off with people making money off Kerry's notoriety, and calendars used really take his biscuit, because every year after an All-Ireland final, various drink companies and various top companies would have a calendar of the All-Ireland champions. And one final, I can't remember what final. I tell you, and it doesn't mean being cocky. It wasn't the 5-in-a-row, by the way. It was on the Sunday morning in the Grand Hotel in Malahide. He took the team photograph. The reason we took the team photograph the morning of the All-Ireland was he wanted the photograph to be on the streets that evening before the opposition. And he did. And then it came to 4 in a row. And for 4 in a row, he decided he wanted to dangle a massive carrot to win 4 in a row. And the carrot that was dangled was a 5-week world trip. 3 weeks to Australia, 1 week to Hawaii, 4 nights in San Francisco, 3 nights in New York, 5 weeks. We won 4 in a row and we got a 5-week holiday. Not alone did we get a 5-week holiday, we got £1,400 a man pocket money, and Dwyer and Ferris knew if he gave it all to us in one go that we could splurge it. So I think every week we got an envelope from Dwyer. So they were the carrots, they were the good days. Ahead of his time. You talk about performance coaches now, and you talk about sports psychologists or whatever like that. Micko was all of those in one, and it was long before they were ever taught it.
Yeah. Was his relationship, by the way, Martin, with Heffo good?
It was okay. They were never close.
Never bosom buddies.
No, absolutely not. No, and that's maybe, I suppose that's the way it goes as manager. But it wasn't. There was no sort of row between them or anything like that, other than the usual sort of energy. But no, it wasn't.
Because I don't, as a child, I don't remember. Get the two of them on the late show together and swap stories and do that kind of thing.
Absolutely not. Now I don't know. I don't know, maybe that was Heffo's personality as well, Micko, but they ran their own show, and obviously they were like the two big bulls at the time. So no, they wouldn't have been close by under any heading. No.
Yeah.
No.
As you sat with him all those hours, so Pat has the kind of lived experience.
Yeah.
As you sat with him in '07 and he took you through his career, you know, certain patterns can emerge or things can strike you about somebody, why they're successful or what they have that makes them a bit special. When you came away from writing Blessed and Obsessed, what struck you about the man?
Well, we did it in 2007. I started it on New Year's Day 2007, and it was interesting because at that time he was managing Wicklow, which made it easier for me because living in Dublin, he was spending most of his week in Dublin. So he used to spend a lot of the time, he trained the teams obviously, and then during the day I think he had a house in Portlaoise at the time, so he used to come up to our house and we spend days there. And what was interesting about him was that my son and my daughter at the time, they were just starting college, and they used to come home and they would actually join us for to listen to the stories, because Rosemary, my wife, would be there as well. And the stories he would tell you, a lot of them didn't appear in the book, by the way, unfortunately. But he had that engaging way with everybody. It didn't matter who you were, young, old, middle-aged. He had that engaging way with them. But the thing about him was his belief. I mean, he made Wicklow at the time when he joined Wicklow. And Pat is right there, by the way, about he had no interest in the league when he joined Wicklow. And I remember saying to me that, oh no, I said, look at. All that matters is the championship. I said, well, Micko, you're not going to win the championship, but no, that's what we're after. And he went to Wicklow, told them, as Pat said, that you're the best players. We're going to. He knew that wasn't actually true, and he had a small enough panel of Wicklow. He always said afterwards that he didn't have the depth, maybe that he would have got over the line perhaps in 2009 into the quarter final if they had maybe 3 or 4 of greater depth. But spending those hours with them, all I can say is that every day he left the house, we all felt better, yeah. And I think everybody, and we'll all look forward to him calling to the house. He was there, as I said, a few days a week for lots of 2007. So that was my takeaway from him, that he just made you feel better. It doesn't matter who you were or what you were talking about or anybody you called to the house, that they went away feeling better, because that was what Micko did with people.
Jeez, isn't that a great thing to be able to say about yourself?
Oh. Yeah, well, that's 100%, and I think everybody that met him would. You walk down the street with Micko, and that's just the way he was. I say that, people loved him. As I say, we just loved him calling to the house for all those days and nights.
Yeah, that's amazing. Pat, I'll give you a final word. I still have the image of you and him holding his hand for 15 minutes. I mean, special people come into your life, and God, he's right up there, amongst the very special in your life. So it is very sad. I know 88 is a great age, and I know he wasn't in good health, but it's a very sad day.
Well, it's not very often you get an opportunity to thank somebody before they pass away. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to thank anyone. And I'd be a private person, but this was just... I'd visited him in hospital, and I told his wife, Geraldine, that, a couple of months ago, I'd visited him in hospital, and he was very weak. He was very frail. The voice was, you could hardly hear him. And he was just lying there. Now, he was conscious. And for about a minute or two, myself and Rosario were there. For about a minute or two, he was he was alert and he was getting but most of the time he was just basically asleep. And I was talking away and whatever like that. And, I said afterwards, I didn't visit him again because I felt I just wanted to remember the Micko I knew, full of life and energy and the glint in the eye and the roguery. That was the Micko I knew. And I said to Geraldine, his wife, I said, look, I prefer I'm not going to visit him anymore. And then when I heard he was bad, that he had been anointed on Sunday, and I knew there wasn't much time left, I just said, Christ, I have to go in. And I had a long chat with Geraldine, but I just had, like I said, a very special 15 minutes. I said goodbye. And I think I thanked him, I don't know how many times. I thanked him a lot of times. That was it.
Yeah. Well, listen, fellas, thank you both so much. Martin, I'm sure you're busy and you'll be writing about him in the paper over the coming days. So thank you for coming in, giving us your time. And Pat, lovely to get your memories, and we really appreciate it. So thanks so much, fellas. Cheers.
Pleasure, Joe.